A very good Tuesday afternoon to you, and welcome to the Fixed Wing Guide channel with me, Stuart Lomas. I hope I find you well. Here in Manchester today, it can't really make its mind up, to be perfectly honest. We have a grey sky, we have a little bit of rain, but it's not particularly cold, and quite a nice breeze, but very odd. I think potentially thunderstorm weather, so we'll wait to see. Um, Now, first off, I want to say that I'm going to be not making a couple of videos for a couple of days because I am leaving Manchester early tomorrow morning, and I'm going down to see my mum, who I think I've mentioned has severe dementia. She lives now down in a care home down in Oxfordshire. So I'm off down to the beautiful county of Oxfordshire tomorrow for a couple of days to spend a bit of time with her, full of hope that she will still know who I am. So this probably will be my last video, probably until perhaps Friday. Depends on what time I get back on Thursday evening, but we shall see. Um, so if you bear with me, and if you get withdrawal symptoms, you can always look at my earlier stuff and just get a little bit of a hit from that, perhaps. Um, right, what I want to talk about today, as you've probably gathered from the title, a little bit of a more serious thing. It's reflecting a trend that I've seen. Now, I've written down some bits of information so I don't forget. So if it looks like I'm reading from something, I am. Um, the worry is, and I don't know whether this is just me, but by all means, feel free to check these things out. I'm a little bit concerned that we are heading for some kind of global or maybe first world financial crash. So I hear you saying, well, hang on a minute, Stuart, how do you, with no financial qualifications, know this? Well, I don't know it. I'm kind of just speculating here. But this is kind of where I'm coming from. As we're all aware, for so many years now, the transaction currency for business has been the US dollar, solely on the basis that it is the largest value currency in the world. It is a fairly stable currency, along with a couple of others, but generally it has been the most stable. It has held its value as far as internal markets in America is concerned. And of late, the only competition kind of it's had is from the euro as another trading currency, solely on the basis that the euro comes from what the elites want to form, which is the United States of Europe, as we have the United States of America. Anyway, there seems to be a how can I phrase this? It seems to be a little bit fall from grace in the business world where the US dollar is concerned. It's not trading on as many markets as it did. More business is now being done worldwide. If you look at Bloomberg and people like that, more business is being done now via the euro because it seems to be a little bit more of a stable currency and a currency which is inevitably going to grow because the more and more countries and independent states join the EU, the more euros will be in circulation over a larger geographical area. So more and more business is now being traded in the euro. Also, there is large investment in sterling right now, which is helping the growth here in the UK. But one of the major trading currencies, if you can call it that, is gold. More and more people now, especially the Chinese, are trading in gold. Market runs on gold are becoming very prevalent these days. We have seen recently, or relatively recently, the gold price getting to its highest that kind of it ever was, and probably ever will be, although I don't know. Um, so there seems to be a purchasing of bullion at a lot of the emerging states. So when I say emerging, people like the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, of course, they trade a lot of the time in gold, even though oil is per dollar per barrel, as it were. China is buying lots of gold. And Russia recently have bought a lot of gold reserve from the UK. Um, it is said that the Federal Reserve in the US um, doesn't hold any bullion at all now. Um, what is speculated, and it is only speculation, is that although the US have a reserve of gold, because obviously there's Fort Knox, which is your main repository, but there's also a secondary repository in New York City. They are saying that Fort Knox is empty, and that the New York gold repository has a very small supply because it has actually all been shipped, as it were, to the Bank of England. There is an increase in quantitative easing. You'll hear a lot of people on the news talking about QE. Well, quantitative easing, if you don't know, is basically governments of the day authorising the printing of money, just printing money, even though there may be nothing more in the coffers, as it were, to substantiate the printing of money. And the prime example here is Britain. I have no idea actually what's printed on the US dollar, for instance. I know it says "In God We Trust" and that kind of thing, but I'll try and show you on British banknotes. A British banknote is not currency, and I know that might sound a funny thing to say. What it actually is what's called a promissory note. Which means that these notes originally were based around weightage of silver. The word pound, the currency, the pound, came from the equivalent weight in silver. So it was a promissory note which would be given to a person who could take to a bank, and that bank would give them a pound of silver in return for a pound note, as it were. I'll try and show you this. It is quite difficult to see. Just bear with me here. I don't know whether you can read there. It says, "I promise to." You see that? "I promise to pay the bearer on demanding the sum of £10. So this isn't currency. It's a promissory note. It's only become currency in kind of the latter day, and when I say latter day, obviously hundreds of years, but it was all based on producing a piece of paper, in this case a £10 note, to a silver holder, who would then give them £10 of silver. So it's a promissory note. Let me know what your banknotes say on them, whether you actually work to a promissory system. Quite interesting to find out that. Anyway, get back to QE. Quantitative easing is when, to try to get an economy rolling, what the banks do on the authorization of the government is produce money which is invested into the economy, doing and buying and investing in businesses and so on and so forth. That has no effect on how much money the government of the day, the country, actually has, as it were. It's just tokens. So there's a rise in that all over the world. If you look at any first world government, you will see that either they have gone on board with a QE program, have had one in the past, or are actually planning one in the future, I wouldn't be surprised. It's not too much going to happen now, but had Greece not taken the deal from the EU and gone back to the drachma, I have a feeling what they would have done was they would have devalued their currency, given them more control, and they would have introduced a project of QE, quantitative easing, which will have boosted their business and everything, so hopefully getting their country back on track. That's not going to happen now because they're now back under the behest of their lords and masters in Brussels, who've given them the extra money perhaps they need to deal with their debt issue. So there you go. There is a rise in Bitcoin. I'm assuming a lot of you will have heard of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a currency which actually doesn't really exist. Well, actually, we all know currencies don't exist anyway these days, but I'll go on to that. A Bitcoin is a digital coin. And the coin, as it were, has no set value. It can move up and down freely in value depending on how much people buy. The more of the Bitcoins people buy, the more their value goes up. But there is a limited number of Bitcoins that can ever be issued. So to clarify that, let's say, for instance, there can be a maximum number of 100 Bitcoins. Those 100 Bitcoins can be worth any amount of money. It is just 100 Bitcoins, but within those 100, it can be worth anything, as it were. So, to give you an idea, when Bitcoins were first launched, they were sold at $3 each. Last year, they reached their high point, which was $1,100 per Bitcoin. And this year, as of kind of now, the end of the financial year, April this year, they leveled out at about $585 per Bitcoin. So yes, their value has dropped, but their value differential between $3 and $585 is actually quite a lot if you think about it. And I think the future will be something on the lines of Bitcoin. We are all aware that money doesn't exist, really. We only see it because we're paid, as it were. Money doesn't exist because if you go to the bank and you want a loan of, say, 10 grand, they don't give you a suitcase full of money. All they do, they organise a series of ones and zeros to their head office. Their head office also authorise that ones and zeros. That ones and zeros denotes $10,000, pounds, euros, whatever, and that miraculously appears in your bank account, or it goes towards a mortgage or whatever it does. So money doesn't exist. It's just electrical money, signals, ones and zeros, binary, and we only see this because shops at the moment will only take this. But as we know, those days are changing very, very quickly now to these, where you don't need money at all. You don't even need a PIN number. You just go, touch it, go. Paid, thank you very much, there's your goods, sir. So, as an entity, it is my feeling that money, currency, the stuff that you and I depend on, will be phased out. I've already mentioned about the Federal Reserve. I mean, you may or may not be aware, even in America, that the word federal doesn't really apply to the Federal Reserve. The federal denotes that it belongs to and is governed by the government of the day. Well, the Federal Reserve in America actually isn't owned by the government at all. It's not controlled by the government at all. I think it's owned and run mostly by the Bilderberg Group, who are this group of elite businessmen and high-powered politicians who control production of money, circulation of cash, and interest rates in America. So the Federal Reserve is nothing to do with the federal government at all. It is a private business, as it were. So quite an interesting one, that. If you've never looked into the Federal Reserve, have a look. There's lots of videos out there on the internet about the Federal. Now, all this comes quite tightly together with another worrying thing that I'm seeing. If it's the case that money is going to become a problem and that there's going to be a financial crash bigger than the one that was called Black Monday in 1987. That could cause financial fear within the population, very much like Greece, where nobody could get money out of the ATMs, etc. Now, at the moment, there is an operation in the United States called Jade Helm, Jadehelm, Jade Helm, and as far as I understand it, it is running now, and it has run from early July through till the early part of September, I believe. And basically what it is, they say, the military say, and the government say, that what it is, it's just a military exercise to work on a scenario whereby if a financial crash came, or we were going to hit by an asteroid, or there was a plague of some description, that it is to enable the military to take control, martial law. But what they're not saying is, for the last 2 or 3 weeks, special forces soldiers are going to be going undercover, i.e. plain clothes, working within communities, certainly in the southern states of America. So if it is a military exercise, and solely a military exercise, why would they need to be undercover and working in secret within different communities in the US southern states? And one of their major targets is Texas, which is, as you're aware, one of the richest states in America, if not the richest state in America, because of all the oil production there. It would be interesting, I think, for you to have a look at Jade Helm. There's a lot of worried people out there on the internet. So how does this tie into what you've been talking about, Stuart? Well, how it ties in is, if indeed there is some form of financial crisis looming, and people cannot get access to their money, and mortgages are foreclosed, and jobs are lost, and prices go way, way out of proportion, inflation is ridiculous, and the currency is devalued, as it were, then people will start getting none too happy about that. And the US government may well be planning on having some form of military law in place under the guise of a military exercise. So could this be elsewhere than in America? Of course, absolutely. Generally, whatever happens in America happens in other first world countries. So continental Europe will get it. We in the UK will get it, although we are a separate entity, as it were. But it will come our way. And the problem is if it happens, there's going to be no notice of it happening, because if Jade Helm is anything to indicate what is going to happen, it's going to happen very soon. So how are we going to make ourselves ready for such a financial crash? Do the governments of the day know something we don't? Is this the reason why online currencies like Bitcoin are trading so high at the moment? Is this the reason why gold is on a run right now, especially from China and Russia? Is this the reason why gold reserves have been moved out of America to a safer, more stable environment like the Bank of England? Is that what is happening? Is this what's actually going on, and we're not being told about it? So that's it. A financial crash. Is it on its way? Let me know what you think on this one. It's something I've kind of noticed a trend on in about the last month or 5 weeks or so, and I've kind of been keeping a note of what's happening in the world, and it seems like there's nobody mentioning it at all anywhere on any of the news networks, which could mean either I'm completely delusional, or something's going on that's going to be serious, and they don't want us to know. And why don't they want us to know? Well, if we do know, the chances are that there will be panic, as there was in Greece. And until, for instance, Jade Helm is in place, they will have no way of controlling the panic. So that's it for this one. Let me know what you think about it. I find it quite interesting. Could I be classed as a conspiracy theorist? Possibly. Do I care? No. Why? Because I just call it an alternative theory. I try to keep an eye on the world. I make a note of things that I find interesting, and I pass it on to you guys. And hopefully, we will have an interesting conversation via the comment field down below. So, as always, comments, questions, suggestions, anything you want to put down there, down below as always. Thank you very much for my followers who've subscribed in the last few days. I think I've contacted you all. If I haven't, drop me a line and I will apologise, and I'll send you a little welcome note. I am noticing, however, that my subscriber list doesn't update as quickly as it has been doing. But there you go. That's a YouTube thing and nothing to do with me. So I say I'm leaving Manchester tomorrow. Won't be back till Thursday evening, I guess. Might do a video Thursday evening, but probably going to be Friday. Having an Omega Seamaster 300 Pro day today feels great on the wrist. Not worn it for a couple of weeks now, I think, but nice to have it back. Thank you very much for your attention. Let me know what you think about this nonsense, and I shall speak to you again soon. Bye bye.